In an unexpected and deeply emotional moment, Hollywood legend Denzel Washington is seen breaking down in tears during a live TV appearance after receiving a surprise call from Burkina Faso's President Ibrahim Traoré. What was said on that call left both the audience and viewers around the world stunned. This unforgettable exchange proves that true leadership and respect can transcend borders, cultures, and even fame. It was supposed to be a regular late-night talk show. The audience cheered as Denzel Washington stepped onto the stage, smiling, calm, legendary. The host greeted him with energy, cracking jokes, playing clips from his latest role. But behind Denzel's warm laughter, there was a strange silence in his eyes, like his heart was somewhere else. Halfway through the show, the host said with a grin, "We've got a little surprise for you tonight, Denzel. A live call from someone very far away." Denzel blinked. What kind of surprise? The screen behind him lit up. A flag appeared. Burkina Faso. Confused murmurs filled the room. Then came a voice, strong, respectful, gentle. "Good evening, Mr. Washington. This is Ibrahim Traoré, President of the Transition of Burkina Faso." Denzel froze. The room went silent. For the first time in the show's history, you could hear nothing, except one man's breath, caught in his throat. No one, absolutely no one, expected what came next. The audience stared. Denzel's hands trembled as the president continued speaking, his French-tinged English calm, but heartfelt. "You don't know me, Mr. Washington, but when I was 14 years old, I was just a barefoot boy in Burkina Faso. I saw you in glory. I saw a black man not begging, not afraid, but strong, and crying for justice." Denzel blinked rapidly. "That night I told my mother, one day I'll fight for people too, like him." The host looked stunned. Denzel covered his mouth. Ibrahim continued, "Years later, when the people of my country needed someone to stand, I remembered your strength, your words, your eyes. I stood not because I was fearless, but because I had seen what courage looked like. In you." The room was silent. Denzel slowly lowered his hand, eyes red with tears. "You're telling me I helped shape a president?" "No, sir," Ibrahim replied. "You helped shape a man who refused to kneel to injustice." A single tear ran down Denzel's face. "Thank you, my brother." The crowd gasped softly. But what the president said next was even more shocking. Denzel leaned closer to the screen. The host sat still, eyes wide. Then Ibrahim spoke again. "Today I speak not just as a president, but as a man who owes a debt. And in Burkina Faso, when someone saves your soul, we do not forget." Denzel shook his head humbly. "No, please, I didn't." "Mr. Washington," Traoré said, "I am officially inviting you to be honored in Ouagadougou. But more than that, I want to name a leadership school after you, a place where our children will learn to stand tall, just as I learned from watching you." The crowd gasped again. The host whispered, "Wow." Denzel's voice cracked. "Mr. President, I don't deserve that." Traoré smiled gently. "That's why you do." The screen went black as the call ended. And there, on national TV, in front of millions, Denzel Washington buried his face in his hands and sobbed. Not from sadness, but from the overwhelming truth that sometimes a single life can echo across oceans and generations. But this was only the beginning. In less than 24 hours, Denzel would be packing his bags. Burkina Faso was calling, and what was waiting there would shake the world. Denzel didn't sleep that night. He kept replaying Ibrahim Traoré's words. His eyes stayed red long after the cameras stopped rolling. By morning, social media had exploded. Denzel and Traoré was trending in over 20 countries. Fans, journalists, and leaders were praising the emotional moment. Some even called it the most powerful TV moment in decades. But while the world was reacting, Denzel was quietly packing his bags. Not for a movie, but for something that felt divine. He booked the next available flight to Burkina Faso. No entourage, no spotlight. Just him, a small backpack, and a heart full of emotions he couldn't describe. As the plane took off, he looked out the window and whispered, "I don't know what I'm walking into, but I know I have to go." Back in Ouagadougou, President Traoré stood by a window in the palace, staring at the runway in the distance. His aides asked, "Should we prepare the press?" Traoré shook his head. No cameras, no speeches, just truth. Something powerful was about to unfold. Neither man knew that in just 48 hours, they would both cry again, this time, together. When Denzel's flight landed, there were no flashing cameras, no red carpets, just quiet. A black SUV waited on the tarmac. A single man stood beside it, dressed simply, no military medals. It was him, President Ibrahim Traoré. Denzel stepped out slowly. Their eyes met, and for a moment, no words were needed. They embraced, not as a celebrity and a leader, but as two men whose lives had unexpectedly crossed across continents. "I'm honored you came," Ibrahim said. Denzel smiled faintly. "I didn't come as a star. I came as a brother." The SUV drove them through dusty roads, past neighborhoods, markets, children running barefoot, waving as the car passed. No one knew who was inside. They arrived at a modest house made of sun-worn clay and tin. "This was my home," Traoré said softly. He opened the door. Inside were no guards, no luxury, just old photos, a woven mat, and silence. Then Traoré handed Denzel a wrinkled picture. In it, a young boy clung to the hand of an older woman. "She raised me when my parents worked day and night. She fed me, bathed me, told me stories of strength." Then quietly he added, "And she's still alive." They drove another hour through winding village roads. No one said much. Denzel stared at the photo of the woman, a wide smile, gentle eyes, and a strength only time could give. "Where is she now?" Denzel asked. Traoré's jaw tightened. "She still works, cleaning classrooms in a rural school." Denzel turned slowly. "At 85, the president nodded. "She never asked for help," she said. "God gave me legs. I'll use them till he takes them." When they arrived, the school looked worn but full of life. Children ran around barefoot, drawing in the dust with sticks. And then she came into view, bent but proud, holding a broom. The same woman from the photo. Denzel stepped out of the car, frozen. Traoré walked toward her. She looked up, and for a moment her eyes filled with tears. "Ibrahim," she whispered. He rushed into her arms. "Mama Hawa." They wept. Then Denzel walked forward. She looked at him and gasped. Her hands trembled. You're him," she said, touching his face. In one quiet courtyard in Burkina Faso, time stood still. 3 souls, 3 stories, one moment that would melt hearts across the world.
But what came next would shake the entire nation.
Maman Hawa sat between Denzel and President Traoré under the shade of an old baobab tree near the school. Her hands were rough, her back slightly bent, but her voice still warm. She told stories of young Ibrahim, how he would cry in her arms when the nights were cold, how he once gave her his only piece of mango so she wouldn't go hungry. Denzel listened with a softness in his eyes the world rarely saw. Then she reached into the pocket of her old apron. "I kept this all these years," she said. She pulled out a folded, yellowed paper, a child's handwriting. It read, "One day I will be a leader, and I will find you, Maman Hawa. I promise." Traoré gasped. He remembered. He had written that letter at age 9, on her birthday, after she gave him her only piece of bread. Denzel wiped a tear. She held on to hope. That's the most powerful kind of faith. Suddenly, a young student ran toward them, barefoot and laughing, holding a cracked plastic ball. "Maman Hawa, will you play?" And she did, still barefoot, still smiling. But something inside Denzel shifted. He was no longer just visiting. He had found something sacred. That evening, Denzel and Traoré returned to the palace. But the mood had changed. Neither man said much. Both were quiet, thoughtful. Then Traoré stood. "I want to show you something I've never shown anyone outside my family." He led Denzel through a private corridor. Stone walls, quiet footsteps, no guards. At the end was a thick wooden door. He unlocked it. Inside was a small room, dimly lit, filled with old books, journals, maps, and one large framed photo. Maman Hawa and a boy, young Ibrahim, both laughing. "This is my real treasure room," Traoré said. Denzel was speechless. Traoré picked up an old notebook. Inside were handwritten notes, his first dreams for Burkina Faso. All of this started with her. "I'm here because she believed I was worth something, even when I had nothing." Denzel touched the page gently. "You lead like a son who remembers love." Traoré nodded. "And I want the world to know that leadership isn't about power. It's about gratitude." The room fell silent. Two great men, one mission, to honor the woman who shaped a president. And Denzel had an idea, but it would take everyone by surprise, especially Maman Hawa. At dawn, Denzel sat outside on the palace terrace, watching the sun rise over Ouagadougou. Maman Hawa's face, her laugh, her strength, it kept replaying in his heart. Then Ibrahim joined him. "I had a thought," Denzel said, sipping tea. "Let's give her the honor she never asked for." Traoré smiled slowly. "I was hoping you'd say that." That afternoon, quietly and without alerting the press, they drove back to the village school with a small team. Children gathered. Teachers stood in silence. Maman Hawa looked confused. "What's happening?" Then Traoré knelt before her, holding a small velvet box. Inside was a golden medallion, engraved with her name and the national seal. "For your service to this nation, as a mother, teacher, and guardian of hope," he said, voice shaking. The children started clapping. Denzel then stepped forward, tears in his eyes. "And from the world of cinema," he said, pulling out an envelope. "I spoke with my producer this morning. Your story will become a movie, and every cent will go to building schools in your name." Maman Hawa dropped to her knees, sobbing. She had spent her life giving, and now she was receiving. But the biggest surprise was still coming. 3 days later, Denzel Washington returned to Los Angeles for a live TV interview on one of America's biggest talk shows. It was meant to be lighthearted, red carpets, upcoming film, laughter. But behind his smile, something had shifted. As the cameras rolled and the host asked him about his trip to Africa, Denzel paused. And then he said, "Can I take a call?" Confused, the host chuckled. "Live." Denzel nodded. The crew scrambled, but within moments the screen behind him lit up. There was President Ibrahim Traoré, live from Burkina Faso. The studio fell completely silent. "Mr. Washington," Traoré said warmly, "your visit reminded us that kindness is not limited by borders." Then he added, "You honored my people. Today I want to honor someone you inspired." He gestured beside him, and Mama Hawa appeared on screen, holding a phone, her eyes shining. The audience gasped. Denzel's lips quivered, his hand trembled. Traoré continued, "You reminded the world that even those with the loudest voices must sometimes pause to listen." And then, Maman Hawa whispered in broken English, "Thank you, my son." Denzel dropped his head and wept on live TV, and so did millions watching around the world. Within minutes, the clip went viral. It was no longer about movies. It was about something deeper. Twitter exploded. Maman Hawa, President of Hearts. Denzel breaks. Silence from Paris to Johannesburg, Tokyo to Atlanta. People posted their own stories of the women who raised them, who shaped them. An old photo of Traoré hugging Maman Hawa in her kitchen became a symbol. International news outlets paused their politics coverage to play that moment. Denzel breaking down, Traoré speaking gently, Maman Hawa saying thank you. CNN called it the most human thing ever caught on live TV. But something even more surprising began to happen. Donations started flooding in. A humble GoFundMe page, created quietly by one of the students from the village school, had aimed to raise $10,000. In just 2 hours, it hit $1 million. People didn't just watch, they felt, and they acted. In a world so divided, this story of a soldier's promise, a mother's love, and an actor's tears was bringing strangers together. But while the world watched, Mama Hawa was fading, and she had one last request. By the 6th day of this unforgettable week, Mama Hawa's body was tired. She had smiled for days, hugged dozens, spoken with presidents and stars, but her body was whispering. She knew. So she asked to speak privately with Denzel and Ibrahim. They came to her small room in the village. No cameras, no microphones, just 3 souls. "I'm old," she said softly, her voice fragile but steady. "I won't see next planting season." They both shook their heads, begging her to rest, to stay strong, but she smiled. "I have no fear. My only wish is that no child in Burkina Faso ever goes to school hungry." A tear rolled down Traoré's cheek. She reached for Denzel's hand. "And you, tell stories that matter. The world listens to you. Tell this story." Then she took a small scarf from under her pillow, faded, torn, stitched with care. It was the one young Ibrahim used to tie around her arm when he played president. She placed it in Traoré's hands. "My first medal," she whispered, and then she said her final words, "Take care of each other." They both held her as she closed her eyes. The sun outside was rising. So was her legacy. President Ibrahim Traoré stood in silence beside Maman Hawa's bed, still holding the scarf. The room smelled of shea butter and old books. Denzel knelt at her feet, his head bowed, shoulders trembling. Then quietly, Traoré spoke. "She gave me everything when I had nothing. And now, I must give everything back." He turned to Denzel and held up the scarf like a royal emblem. "We will build something in her name. A school, a garden, a future." Denzel looked up, eyes swollen. Yes, we will. I'll help." Outside, the people had gathered. They somehow knew she was gone. Traoré stepped out, looked at the crowd, and raised the scarf. "Mama Hawa has gone to rest, but her spirit will feed generations." The crowd burst into tears. In less than 12 hours, the news had spread globally. Burkina Faso declares National Day of Mourning for Mama Hawa. Traoré made another promise during a press conference that night. "Every child in Burkina Faso will know her name." And Denzel, he quietly canceled all upcoming appearances. He said, "I've played kings and generals, but today I serve a mother." The next morning, the sun rose gently over Burkina Faso. A simple wooden casket sat in the middle of the village square. There were no golden statues, no velvet ropes, just flowers, drums, silence. President Traoré walked behind the casket, alone, carrying only one thing: the scarf. Denzel followed, his suit wrinkled from sleep, his eyes red. They didn't speak. They didn't need to. From across the world, leaders sent messages, but what touched hearts most was a small boy from Niger who walked barefoot for 2 days just to bring a letter that said, "Thank you for raising our president." As the casket was lowered into the earth, the village sang. Children wept. Elders clutched their chests. A bird landed on the grave and didn't move. Then something happened that no one expected. Denzel stepped forward, reached into his pocket, and pulled out a necklace. It was his father's. He whispered, "She reminds me of him. Strong, quiet, and never asked for anything." He placed it on the grave and said, "Goodbye, Mama." Even the cameras stopped filming. Some things are too sacred for screens. That night, President Ibrahim Traoré and Denzel Washington sat under the stars on a straw mat in total silence. The fire cracked quietly between them. They didn't need speeches. They had just buried the woman who shaped both of their lives, one with her hands, the other with her spirit. Then Traoré said, "Denzel, this week, I remembered who I am." Denzel nodded. "Me too." In the quiet night, they made a pact. Not one written in ink, but sealed in pain, gratitude, and hope. Within hours, plans began for the Maman Hawa Foundation, a joint initiative to provide food, education, and emotional healing for rural children in Burkina Faso and beyond. And Denzel, he committed a full year's salary from his next film to it. But the most powerful part wasn't the money. It was a new short video Denzel released just before flying home. He looked into the camera and said, "If one woman in a small village can raise a future president and change the heart of a Hollywood actor, then what are we waiting for?" That video, 100 million views in 24 hours. And the world held its breath for what would come next. 3 days after the funeral, Denzel returned to the U.S. quietly. No press, no fanfare. But the producers of his long-scheduled live interview insisted it had to happen. It had already been promoted across networks. Denzel agreed, but asked for one condition. "Let me speak from my heart. No script." The set was bright. The audience was eager. Everyone expected light talk, maybe a joke or two. But when the host asked, "Denzel, you've traveled the world. What's one moment that changed your soul?" He didn't answer at first. He simply pulled something from his coat pocket. It was the scarf. Then he whispered into the mic, "President Ibrahim Traoré called me, and I couldn't breathe after." He reminded me that greatness isn't in awards. It's in mothers who wash your wounds and presidents who remember them. The host, visibly confused, asked, "And what did he say exactly?" Denzel's eyes watered. He slowly picked up his phone, played a voice recording, and let the room hear Traoré's words. "Thank you for honoring a woman the world forgot, but who made a man the world remembers." And just like that, Denzel broke down in front of millions. The broadcast spread like wildfire. People paused dinner tables, newsrooms went silent, social media froze, and the clip of Denzel, sobbing, clutching the scarf while playing President Traoré's voice, became the most shared video of the year. Comments poured in. "I've never cried this hard over a stranger's love. This made me want to call my mom right now. Who is Ibrahim Traoré? Because the world needs more leaders like him." Across Africa, stories of forgotten mothers began surfacing. In America, youth groups organized candlelight vigils in honor of Mama Hawa. But in Burkina Faso, something even more unexpected happened. Children across villages began writing letters, not to Santa, not to celebrities, but to President Traoré. One letter read, "If I work hard like you, will I also make my mother proud?" And Denzel, he stayed quiet after the interview, until the next morning. He posted a photo on his Instagram of a single tree in Burkina Faso. The caption, "She watered roots that now hold up nations." No hashtags, no promotion, just truth. And the world watched and wept. Exactly 1 week after the surprise call, a statue was quietly unveiled in Ouagadougou. It wasn't of a general, or a king, or a president. It was of a woman, holding a child's hand, wrapped in a familiar scarf. A bronze plate below read, "To Mama Hawa, the mother of all leaders." President Ibrahim Traoré stood before it with Denzel Washington beside him, both holding candles. Neither spoke, because some endings are too sacred for words. That night, the wind blew softly through the city. Villagers said they could feel Mama Hawa's spirit brushing against their cheeks. And in Hollywood, Denzel made one final gesture. He announced a new scholarship, the Hawa Fund, in partnership with the Burkina Faso government, dedicated to girls from rural Africa who dream of leading. As the press begged for quotes, Denzel simply said, "Some phone calls change your schedule. This one changed my soul." Dear viewers, if this story touched your heart, made you cry, made you think, or reminded you of someone you love, please like, subscribe, and comment below with, "I believe in the power of love and leadership." Your words matter. Let's make stories like this travel across the world. Let's remind people that greatness is not about fame. It's about heart. Drop your thoughts below. Share this video with someone who needs hope today. And never forget, one kind act can echo across generations. Thank you for watching.